Alright, so just want to apologize for my phone goofing up out of the blue and shutting off about, I don't know, 7/8 of the way through my little spiel last night. By the time I got done messing around with this video and almost an hour of uploading it, it was close to 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was just too tired to try and come back out here and finish up the rest of it. I don't know what the issue was. I still had plenty of memory on the phone, still had plenty of battery. I guess it just got tired of holding down the play button. I don't know. Hard to say. Anyways, if I remember right, last night I left off with just passing the wreck on the toll road. It was rainy, or it had just got done raining. The roads were slick. Visibility was rough because the road surface was warm, it was steaming, etc., etc. So, passed this van, overturned on its side, decided it was time to just get off the road and get in for the night. I can't remember exactly where I left off, so I might be overlapping a little bit, but at any rate, I pull off take the exit, and at this point my phone is, next to useless, so I get onto Google Maps. I cannot figure out where I am in Pennsylvania. None of the exits look like the exit I'm at. I couldn't find the hotel name. So I was like, oh, for crying out loud. I was already frustrated anyways from, white knuckling it this, the last couple of hours anyways. So I finally just drove on down the exit a little bit farther and came around the curve, and finally I started seeing the lights from gas stations and a couple of hotels and whatnot, and that was it. At that point I was golden. So that was about 10:30 or so that I wound up at the hotel on that last evening. So I get a decent night's sleep and then wake up 6 o'clock in the morning on the 11th. So keeping in mind, all this time I'm fighting the truck trying to overheat because getting into hilly terrain, pulling a fairly heavy load for a half-ton pickup truck with 373 gears and an overdrive transmission, so it's asking a lot of a small block Chevy. So anyway, 6 a.m. I hit the road, and luckily I've got nice cool temperatures, so I've got both my windows rolled down, my rear window open, and I'm running my heater to the extent possible to wick off as much heat from the engine as I possibly can at this point. And I'm just kind of keeping an eye on my temperature. I'm keeping it in a safe location and turn the heater on as I know that I'm approaching an incline, turn the heater off, because I don't know, there again, I don't know if my alternator is going to go out at some point because I'm having to run my windshield wipers part of the time, headlights part of the time, so last thing I want to do is lose my alternator on top of all this. So, juggling all these devices to make sure that nothing gets pushed too far. But at any rate, keep my temperature in check. I know at some point, I don't know where it's coming, but I know there's a really, really steep, really long climb that I have to make. And at about 10 o'clock in the morning, I finally get to that one incline. So I drop it down into third gear and get into the slow lane. Luckily at this point there are 3 lanes, so I don't have to screw with traffic too badly. And start watching my temperature, watching my speed, and slowly climbing this thing. I think I was down to about 40 miles an hour for a while on this climb. And my temperature is going up and up and up and up and up. And as my temperature goes up, I'm kind of backing off the throttle more and more and more. So finally I get to where my needle is just about to bump the red line on the gauge. Luckily, at about that point, I finally get to an emergency pull off. So I pull off the road, and at that point, my my warning light starts to flash for my temperature. So I'm like, okay, I'm golden. I keep the engine running. I idle it for a while. I think I revved it up just a little bit, to suck in more air through the radiator. And after, I don't know, 3-4 minutes of that, my temperature finally started to slowly come down. So I let the temperature get down to a comfortable spot. It must have been, I don't know, 10-15 minutes on this emergency stop. So after that, I slowly pull back out on the road, and I still a little bit of an incline yet to deal with. And then it's into a tunnel, and unfortunately at that point I had a poor semi stuck behind me, so doing the best I could to get as much speed as I could, but I just wasn't able to. But anyways, made it through that. The hills started to mellow out. Still luckily had reasonably cool temperatures. About the time I got to Zanesville, Ohio, the terrain had mostly flattened out. I mean, it was just kind of, just rolling hills. Nothing that was going to cause me any major problems at that point, unless I was just, absolutely ridiculous with the amount of throttle that I gave the thing, which I wasn't in that big of a hurry, so I just let it go. It's starting to get warmer and warmer, which, things were timed perfectly at that point, because, if I had gotten into the bad hills when it was this warm, it would have just been time to just stop for the day and come at it again, either later that evening or whatever. But at any rate, I get to Columbus, Ohio, around Columbus with no problems, get onto US 33, no problems. What was it, around the Bell Fountain area, I pull off to get some gas, and out of the blue, it sounds like something goes pop or snap from the trailer area. I'm like, what the fuck, so I stop. Luckily, I'm not on the interstate at this point. I stop and thoroughly examine the trailer, look underneath, look at the sides, wiggle everything back and forth, make sure the straps are still tight. The only thing I can see that at this point that might have been the issue is a piece of steel tubing that looks like it was nothing more than a conduit for the electrical stuff on the trailer, the lighting. Since this thing is, way overloaded on the trailer, it was bowing the angle iron cross braces for the cross supports underneath the wooden decking. And I think this piece of tubing just snapped a weld on one side. Rest of the trip home was uneventful. I took it extra easy at this point because I wasn't sure where or if there was a problem at this point. The only positive thing I knew at this point was I was not the heaviest load. I have not put the heaviest load on that trailer. It had, at one point, it had seen, like, I think they said 4,000 pounds worth of heating pellets. So I know I wasn't nowhere near that amount of weight. I was just centralized, and I was, almost right over the axle, just a little bit far forward of it. So I was trying to keep some of the weight on the tongue of my truck, to try and stabilize the trailer as much as possible. At any rate, worked out like a champ. I made it home about 4:30 in the evening, 4:30 in the afternoon at that point, and couldn't have been happier. I no more than get home, I come running in the house to get some kind of food because I'm just freaking starving at this point. As soon as I got some food in me, sat down for a few minutes, then I was outside, taking the plastic off of this and getting my Home Sweet Home video so that people could finally actually see, me walking around this and see what it actually really is. Good lighting, et cetera, et cetera. So that was a really good time to do that. But that was pretty well it. I mean, granted, that was a lot. I had no idea it was going to take me this long to make it through all of this epic venture. I really thought I could get through it in like 20 minutes. So if it was totally boring to anybody, I totally understand, But oh, and the other thing I wanted to mention is I'm getting more and more comments these days, and I really try to respond to people's comments, especially when they have really helpful stuff to say, really interesting things to say. I really like to try and get back in touch with them. But I often put out videos so frequently that I don't always see if someone comments a video 3, 4, 5 back or a couple of days back. And so I hope nobody takes offense that I've ignored them, because it's certainly not my intention to ignore them, except for the ones, I assume it's a robot out there that's leaving me the whole wanna be friends or free sex girls comments. So those ones I usually just pretty well ignore. Not that I wouldn't mind some free sex girls, obviously, but I don't think there's any point in responding to a robot. But anyways, I mean, I know I've accidentally missed some of you guys responding to you, and it really actually means a lot that you guys take the time to comment on my videos, even if it's just to say hi or God bless. I appreciate it. Under the circumstances with the pandemic and whatnot, this is almost as much social interaction as I get, with the exception of the nights that the neighbors come over and we wind up looking for comments and whatnot, which luckily we had a real good one a couple of nights ago. We got to see the Neowise comet, bright and beautiful in the northern sky. So anyways, I think I've probably blabbered on long enough about this, and still pretty tired, so I don't think I'm probably going to do the next project on this thing terribly soon. But the next big thing I'm desperate to do is I want to get the shaper part actually cutting some material. But it might be another day or two. Still fighting with the plumbing issue that I had. Come to find out, it doesn't look like it was a toilet. It was my water heater leaking, so I have to change gears on that and get something sorted on that, because I haven't exactly been able to take anything other than a freezing cold shower in the past few days, and that's a little annoying also. So the next bout of energy I've got is probably going to be doing something to give myself hot water. So I thank you guys for having the patience to come along with me on this, and I think that is long enough.